Today I'll be working on this Ashland power conveyor belt. It is one of the products that Ashland builds to basically just move things. It's a power roller and they make different models. I'll put in the comments what model this one is. Basically it has an electric motor that goes to a reducer gearbox that drives a sprocket on a chain, and that chain turns these belt pulleys, and you can buy them with different speeds. Today on this one I'm going to be replacing this reducer gearbox right here. The reducer gearbox is made by Boston. I've ordered a new one, and I'll be making the repair to get this replaced. And there's a few other things I'll be doing, like replacing the sprocket and some other parts, but I'm waiting on those parts. So today it's just going to be this reducer gearbox that I'll be putting on. All right, so first thing I need to do is get to the inside and get the sprocket off. So I'm going to remove this chain cover. It has two 7/16 inch bolts that hold it on. I'll remove those real quick. All right, the next thing I need to do is go ahead and release the tension on the chain. There's a way to adjust that up underneath. I'll show you. What you'll need is just a little 14 millimeter wrench. So you want to release this locking nut right here, and then unscrew this, and you'll want to loosen all four of these bolts, 1, 2, so that this thing can slide. And when you do, you'll be able to move the whole assembly. Now I'm just gonna move it to my left, give myself some slack on this chain. All right, got the belt off. You can see here that I've got a broken sprocket. I need to remove this sprocket. It has a set screw down in there. You're going to use a 1/8 inch Allen wrench to unscrew that and get that off. And then I'll be using a puller set to pull this broken sprocket off. Okay, I got my puller installed. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my teeth of my puller are on the back side of the sprocket, not on the teeth of the sprocket. That way I don't end up damaging them further. I guess in this case it doesn't really matter because things are already broken, but it's a good practice. Just pull this sucker right off of here. You can see I'm leaving room for my key right there to pass my puller. Coming off pretty good. Back on my belt there. All right, and I'll go ahead and pull out my little key there. If I were going to reuse this, I would be saving it. In this case, I will be using it again temporarily, but I'm ordering a new one. It'll come with a new key. Either it will come with a new key, or your Boston gearbox, when you order that, it should come with its own key. Now the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and disconnect my wiring harness from this electrical motor. The reason I'm doing that is because the only thing that supports this motor is the reducer gearbox that I'm going to be changing. So once I take the bolts off of that, this thing's just going to dangle free, and I don't want it just dangling on its wires. So I'm going to open up this cover to access the wires. With a 1/4 inch nut drive, I'll just take out the top one, and I'm going to loosen the bottom one and just swing that cover open. All right, inside here I'm going to have wires. Let's see. So coming from the motor, I've got a red wire, white wire, black wire, and they each go to their own little wiring nuts. So I'm going to disconnect these at the nuts. You might want to take a picture of these and where they go so that you'll remember them when you go to put it back together. But the white one looks like it goes to this brown and orange, and the black one goes to the Let's see if I can find the black one in here. Yeah, your black wire, it's going to go to the blue and red, and then your red wire, it's going to go to a red and tan color. All right, with my wires disconnected and free, I'm going to go ahead and remove this little ring so that it will slip. This whole little 90-degree elbow will slip right out of this junction box. Now I removed that little nut and the little green washer behind it, and that's when I noticed that there's also a green grounding wire coming out, and it's connected up here in the top left-hand corner of this little junction box. You can use the same 1/4-inch nut driver to release that as you did to remove the screws that held on the cover plate. All right, now pull my wires through here, and I'm going to save my little nut plate, or my little nut and washer. And I just took that grounding screw and just put it in this hole just so I'll know where it is. I like to do stuff like that so I don't lose things. These I'll just put up here with the rest of the little parts that I'll keep in this pan. All right, with my wiring harness disconnected, I can go ahead and start to remove this motor. So the electrical motor will be attached to your reducer gearbox by 4 of these bolts, and you can use a 14mm wrench just to get those off. I've already kind of loosened these, but even without pre-loosening them for this video, I can break it pretty easily. They're not gorilla torqued on there. The only one that is a little difficult is this one that's behind the back shield for the chain guard, but even that one I could access pretty easily just by flexing this out of the way a little bit. So let's get that off. Okay, with those 4 bolts out, it's time to remove this motor. So to help get this motor off, you just need a little flat bladed screwdriver. And if you look around the flange of this of the input for your reducer gearbox, you'll notice this one area that has a little slot, and that allows you to put a screwdriver in there, and you're just going to kind of wiggle the motor and give it some backwards pressure by kind of prying it backwards. So I'm pushing it that way and helping this motor back off. What you're trying to do is get it to back off this input right here, and you can see that it has a key that will go in there, so putting it back together will be fun, but we'll go ahead and get it off right now doing that. So I backed it off a few inches, and you can kind of see down in there what I was talking about. There's your key that goes on your shaft. It's sliding out of the input side of the flange, and you can also see that I've got a lot of lubrication down there at the bottom. This seal has been leaking right there. That probably is what led to this thing needing to be replaced. So again, I'm just prying and wiggling as I pull this backwards off the shaft. All right. Go ahead, take my key out. Again, it's another one of these keys you want to save. In fact, this might be the key that comes with it. I'm going to compare the sizes. No, that key's different. That must have been the one that came with the motor. So the key that comes with the gearbox isn't the one that goes to the motor. You want to save that somewhere else. I'm just going to put it in my pan. Now with the motor off, you can start to see where that input seal has started to fail, allowing the lubrication to leak out. All right, the next thing I'm going to have to do is remove the 4 mounting bolts for the reducer gearbox, and they're going to be found right there. There's one right there, and then up underneath on the back side. Let's see if I can get the camera to orientate. There's going to be 2 more down there. You can kind of see them in the video. There's 2. You're going to need a 1/2-inch socket, and I'm going to recommend go ahead and removing this bolt and loosening it up so that you can just let this fall down free. I've already got my throttle done. When that comes off, it's going to have a little bolt collar on the back side. You can kind of see it right there. It's green, this collar right here. So you want to make sure you save that. It's basically a spacer. So I'm just going to take out the bolt, and then I'll grab the collar, and I'll keep them together up there, just like that, with the rest of my parts. And then I can go ahead and rotate this down a little bit, and I can now easily get to this bolt that I need to get to. Again, that's a 1/2 inch. Once you've got that last screw about out, you want to support it, the gearbox, because it's heavy, and just let that bolt hang as you pull the sucker off. And then you'll have your whole gearbox out, and you can start working on the lubrication and installation of the next one. So here's the old reducer gearbox, and you can see that it's got this model number on it. It's got a different model number, it looks like, than the one that I'm replacing it with, but it's okay because all these extra letters like that K and the 3 on the end indicate or whether or not it's been pre-lubricated. This one was installed pre-lubricated, this one was shipped unlubricated, and the 3 is just the orientation of this gearbox as it mounts to the device that it's attached to, because at different rotations it needs a different level of oil inside it. I'll provide you a link to the owner's manual and installation guide for this so that you can kind of see what we're talking about, and you can select the right one. So the lead time on something like this might be 3 weeks because they've got to put in the oil for you depending on the way you're going to have it mounted, but they might have 11 of these just sitting on the shelf unlubricated if you're willing to lubricate it yourself. So this rotation is the configuration that the gearbox basically goes in. You have your motor input going in right here, and then you have your output shaft that goes to the sprocket right here. So according to the guide, my oil level needs to go basically across the middle of these 2 bolts. So I'll be using one of the mini fill ports. You've got one here, you've got one here, and you've got one down here. Actually, there's not one down here. Oh yeah, no, oh, yeah, one right there. So there's 3 of them that you could use. I'll be using the one right here to get to it, and I'll be filling that up and getting my oil level right. Now the type of oil recommended happens to be right here on the sticker on the new one. I'm not sure if they put that information. Nope, they just put a little guide, you know, a phone number and one of these things you can take a picture of and get an internet link. But this is the correct one. This stuff is expensive. You can find this through several websites online. Just do a keyword search for that Klubersense UH16-460. So how do you determine how much oil has been put in here to get to the right spot? You know, in order to do that, you use the chart that came with the instructions. I'll provide a picture and a link to that. It's going to have some information you're going to need. One is the model number. We're using the F718, so that will be on the chart. What o'clock position we're going to be mounted in. We're going to be in the 3 o'clock position, so that corresponds to the 3 on the chart, and where those 2 numbers on the chart intersect is at 16 ounces.
So if you open the link, you'll find this diagram, and it shows different positions you can mount the gearbox in. You can see I'm position 3. You just match up the way it looks in the picture, and then you can see I'm in the 3 o'clock position. So then I take the chart below it and I go across from position number 3. I go to the right, and I'll come to 16, which is right below model number 718. We're using a 718 gearbox.
So I've got a 1 quart container here, so that's going to have 32 ounces. Half of 32 is 16, which is right there, so I'm going to pour oil into here until I get to the 16-ounce mark, and then I'll know I've added the correct amount on the inside. So the plug that I'm going to use to refill the oil inside this lubricant is this top one. I like it because it allows me to rotate it over to the base that the motor goes on, and it's nice and level. And then you're going to need a 1/4 inch Allen wrench to go ahead and loosen up that oil fill port. I've gone ahead and fashioned myself a redneck funnel to use for this, and then I'm just going to start carefully pouring in my lubricant until I get to the 16-ounce mark on the side. So this is considered a food grade lubricant, and it's actually clear, and it's very viscous, very thick. All right, that's done. Now I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the fill cap. Okay, so if you've ordered a reducer gearbox that's pre-filled with synthetic lubricating oil, when you receive it, all of its refill ports will be closed off with these. But if you order one that needs to be lubricated before you assemble it, then all of them except one will be filled. And so when you're filling it, you want to make sure that that one that is open doesn't allow any oil to leak out. So what I did is I went ahead and robbed a fill port screw off of the old one and put it on the new one. And so this gearbox is completely sealed all the way around. Every one of these has a plug in it. And I did that so I could maneuver it and work with it without having to worry about oil coming out of that one open port. Now, after I've installed this, I'm going to go ahead and put in my vent plug. And the vent plug is important. You want to make sure you put that in. I'm going to install mine right over here. And the reason I'm doing it at the end is because I don't want to have to worry about any oil coming out of my vent plug while I'm maneuvering this and installing it. Now that I'm ready to install it, I need to get this one lubricated on its bore. Inside here is the bore. That's where you want to apply this anti-seize compound. Some anti-seize compounds have an abrasive component to them, so you don't want to install that on things like your shafts for your shaft on your motor, or your output shaft on your reducer gearbox. But inside the bore here, you can apply some. All right, now that I've coated the bore with the anti-seize compound, I'm ready to go ahead and install the new reducer gearbox. So what I did is I just got all the bolts started, and I started with these two to hold it in place while I got the ones up inside that channel started. And now they are ready to be tightened down. Okay, I've got my reducer gearbox in there. I went ahead and put a little piece of cloth between where this chain guard rests on my output shaft, just to keep it from getting scratched or anything. And now I can go ahead and install the motor. Before I do, I think I'm going to clean up the corrosion on the shaft a little bit with some emery cloth. And as I line up my motor, you can see I've got my shaft key lined up with the little slot in the bore for the input on the reducer gear. And now I'm just going to kind of line up my screws so that my wiring box is in the original position, and I'll go ahead and line it up so these bolt holes all line up. If you need some help getting it to seat all the way in, you can use a rubber hammer and just kind of tap the back side of these nut lugs on either side, going all the way around until it gets close, and then you can insert your bolts and use it to draw it down nice and even. And before I put in my bolts, while I still have some room to move this around and wiggle it, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my wire harness and shroud and get it all squared away. I'm just going to do everything but wire it right now. Of course, you don't want to forget to slide on your little green washer and your nut before you start wiring things up. Okay, with my wiring harness all taken care of, now I'm starting to put in the mounting bolts between the input flange of the reducer and the motor. I'm going to start tightening those down by hand, and then I'll start tightening them down evenly to make sure I close up that gap nice and smooth and evenly. I put a little anti-seize compound on the threads of these mounting bolts that I'm installing between the flange and the motor, because I figure it'll help the next guy get these off, and that next guy might be me. Get in there, you sucker. All right, that was the last one. I'm just getting hand tight. Now I'm going to go ahead and start drawing them down with the wrench. And in case you forgot, that's a 14mm wrench. Next steps I went ahead and completed because they're pretty straightforward. Just slid on the sprocket back on with the key in the right spot. And then once it was where I wanted it, I tightened it down using my Allen head screw. Same thing I did up here. I needed to adjust this because at one time or another this set screw had become loose, and it allowed this sprocket to go back on the shaft and come in contact with the chain guard. You can kind of see the damage it did, so that's why I've got a new chain guard. But for now I've got it repositioned again. Then I went ahead and put my chain on, and I adjusted the set screw down here to tighten that chain. And once I got it in the position I wanted it, I went ahead and put on that, or tightened down that nut right there to keep it from backing off again. What you're looking for here is you want to make it so that you put a straight edge across the two, the top of the two pulleys, top of that pulley, top of this pulley right here. And then you're going to measure the deflection. The part that hangs down should come down about 1/4 of an inch. So you want that to be able to move basically about a 1/4 inch from being completely tight. It needs to droop about 1/4 of an inch, which is right there. So just imagine, if you would, a line that goes from the top of the sprocket all the way down to the top of the sprocket here, and the top of the chain should be 1/4 of an inch below that line. Now I'm going to go ahead and start reattaching my wires. I did end up replacing one of the caps on these, but the rest I reused, and I went ahead and taped them back up. And I've got my grounding wire up in there secured. So now I'm going to tuck this back in, and then I'm going to tighten this up with a screwdriver. There we go. And cover put back on. And up underneath, I don't want to go forget to go back and install my vent plug, so I'm going to remove this port, and then I'm going to install the vent plug. Come on, man, get on there. Can't see the hole. There it is. And that vent is a 5/8 inch. I'm just gonna kind of snug it down in there. Go crazy with it. All right, now the fact that the vent plug was not installed on the other one may be what led to having that seal fail. I can see that the heat maybe could have produced pressure inside this that couldn't properly vent, so it escaped by blowing out that seal. I've got a few more things to check, and then I got to do some cleaning up on tools, and then I'll be ready to try this out and test it. All right, let's go ahead and give it a test. We got it plugged in. It's kind of nice and smooth now. Got that chain oil. Try it the other direction. Very nice. Now with the synthetic lube, you can go about 1,500 hours before you need to go ahead and check the oil or give it an oil change. And then look at the installation instructions. It talks about how this can heat up to 160 degrees while it's in its breaking in period. If it and that's not an indication of a problem. That's normal, but it shouldn't continue to do that. So make sure you review all that literature carefully. I'll give you a link to the website where you can find all that. Hope this has helped you get everything back together. I'm going to put the cover back on and be done with this job. Please like and subscribe to this channel if it helped you out. I am trying to get the channel up to a point where it's producing income, and that way I can retire in Belize. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.